Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wake Up Missoula. It is the end of March. It's March 27th. A lot of things happening in and around the city of Missoula this weekend. So many events, so many causes, so many things happening. KFGM, the Missoula Community Radio that sublets here at MCAT, will be doing their major fundraiser and record sale starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. You want to go check that out. That's happening in the Missoula Senior Center. You won't be able to miss it. I'll talk a little bit more about it later in my show, but also I wanted to mention today is Project Community Connect, which brings all the services to help people who are suffering or about to suffer from houselessness, looking to get some resources and everything connected. Even if you're trying to look up ways to get your documentation so you can get the job, to get out of homelessness, and all the resources needed. All happening from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. today here at the Missoula Public Library. So it's just a lot of great resources here. Of course, the library always has those rad days where they have resources from like 2 to 4 on kind of like a semi-weekly basis, but this one is supposed to be the big annual event to help promote these organizations and to help many different avenues for people to get out of homelessness. So let's jump right into some city council. So we had a pretty short agenda on Monday, an overall short meeting. The public comment had two of the same folks talking about the Southgate Commons again, from Katie Thompson to Suzette Dussault. We had them speaking up their piece about this to the city-owned property in length. Much of what the city plans to do with this property is to create a park, and all additional revenue will go towards a housing solution trust fund for leveraging that property for more housing in the vein of affordability to focus it elsewhere. So Ellie Harrison is also talking about the Project Community Connect, which is happening here in the library.
Just wanted to remind all of you that this Friday from 10 to 3 at the library is Project Community Connect. It's an amazing opportunity to connect our neighbors to resources. So I want to personally invite each one of you to see the good work being done in our community and to actually celebrate the good, because there's a lot of good going on. So remember, if you know anyone in need, this is an awesome opportunity to send them to the library this Friday, 10 to 3.
All right. So like she said, 10 to 3, a lot of people joining forces to be part of this. Project Community Connect could be used to referred to as Project Homeless Connect, as in the beginning they advocated for communities to step up to housing on the basis that one person on the street is one less ambulance ride to the hospital. As of last year, some of those numbers went down from previous years, not necessarily because they're less homeless, just because many people who are dealing with the cost of living in Missoula left. Public hearing, approval for the final parts of the Unified Development Code are implemented, and their plans which will affect the following in July this year, which will include business licensings and regulations, streets, sidewalks and public places, public services, and building and construction. Ross Molenhauser, city engineer, presented on these changes, and this is what he had to say.
Everything that was development related got moved to the development code, what is now Title 22, and has been adopted. And everything that was kind of maintenance and operations, how we operate our utilities, let's say, or how we maintain sidewalks or sidewalk cafes on those, or how we run the cemetery. A lot of that is still in these titles. And so we needed to update. We realized that after we got UDC adopted, that now is the right time to clean up these so we don't have confusing language or duplicate language.
All right, so the big part of this is just to make sure everything becomes in compliance. These are just to make the city departments work better together and with developers and permitting process, which has been a major problem for folks trying to develop in some of those tricky sites across Missoula, like the Southgate Commons. Ross also talked about the newer infrastructure when it comes to EVs or electric vehicles.
So temporary power cords is something new that our sustainability group and our transportation planners kind of got together on and asked us to add some language on. And this is the idea that if you maybe live in a mixed use street or a commercial street, you might not be able to easily charge an electric vehicle in your garage, or maybe you don't have a garage. And so what if you want to park on the street in front of your house with an electric vehicle and you want to charge it? We put some code. We looked at what other cities have done around this, and we talked to our building department and electrical experts and made sure that this was going to be safe and appropriate for our streets, and laid out some rules how you could get this. There'd still be a permit that you would need to do to get this, and so we'd be able to kind of keep track of these.
Yep. So it's not as easy as feeding your plug-in from your apartment to feed into your EV vehicle. With all that money you could spend on electricity, it's good to know there is a process to extend those wires for folks who don't have driveways or garages overall. So far, the city moved to implement these points to make permitting possible to go in effect by July. Most of this stuff usually tends to take 30, 60 days to kind of really integrate and fully implement, because it's a huge code reform, and these are just the many little pieces, just making sure that the Unified Development Code moves on and transitions smoothly. Mayor Andrea Davis talks about the Rivara project on the north side as applications are opening for folks for affordable housing.
Those homes are under construction. It's a mix between market rate and deed restricted community land trust homes. There'll be a total of 89 built in total. The first phase is being completed. Again, it's a mix of market rate and community land trust homes. They are taking applications now for studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Some of the deed restricted community land trust workforce homes will be available in April. And it's really easy to find the information and to submit an application online at Front Step CLT. And on that, you'll see some information there just around income qualifications and those kinds of things. But as a reminder, we used Missoula Redevelopment Agency investment. We invested in these homes and infrastructure investment utilizing the workforce housing program. And so households earning up to 120% of the area median income are eligible, which is about $94,000 for a household of 2. Again, this is the city partnering with private sector, Rivara Development, but also nonprofit sector like NeighborWorks Montana and Front Street Community Land Trust. So I'd encourage folks, if they are interested themselves or know of anybody interested in an affordable homeownership option, to consider these. Real easy to find them.
All right. So if you go to the website, Front Step CLT, you go to this nice website that kind of shows, this is originally the Northside neighborhood. They had a long title for this particular one, but then they expanded a little bit further from Northside. These are the organizations that kind of put on those summer movies at Head Start School, but also we're talking about revitalizing and working with a lot of different organizations. And this is the place where you want to basically apply, for homeowners, home buyers, community members, news and events, all these different kinds of things related to Northside new housing project when it comes to the Rivara project. So check that out. It's frontstepclt.org, and you can sign up for an affordable condo, house, or that kind of stuff too. Essentially, a lease to own kind of model where you buy a home built on the land and the city holds the land in a trust for when the residents pay for it. You can go. So if you do look at the website, they are looking for affordability for houses based on a certain level of income, as you heard from Andrea Davis, $95,000 a year, which is a pretty good deal because that's considered like pretty low when it comes to the average median income for Missoulians, because the average median income for Missoulians, from what statistics have shown, is anywhere between $45,000 to about $60,000 for most Missoula residents. It's fairly pretty low here in Missoula, and where you have rents that as high as $1,200 to $1,500 a month just to live independently, it kind of adds up. So last week, the state of Montana Supreme Court blocked efforts by state Republicans looking to upend those housing reforms made in the 2023-2025 legislature. Mike Nugent, City Council, reflects on this during some of the comments from City Council. This is his response.
A lot of the housing reforms that we actually worked for and passed and pushed forward. And I just wanted to highlight that there was some conversation during that process about challenges that were working with their way through the courts, but the Supreme Court upheld all of the legislature's directions over the last 2 sessions that were being challenged, and some of those initiatives being pushed by the governor. And one thing I did want to point out is that the Supreme Court did state affirmatively that the public's right to participate is up front now, and they stood by that.
And yeah, that was just a big part of it. And, just for an example, when they were talking about the UDC here in Missoula, they had 18 sessions about zoning reforms and all that kind of transparency. And, this whole lawsuit was from a Bozeman-based group of homeowners called Montana's Against Irresponsible densification, alleging that the housing laws violated Montana's constitution, while arguments stated that the law limited public input. The court found that it allowed for public participation. Hence, much like I mentioned, that the UDC had 18 public sessions for people to get input on there, not to be confused with the kind of things where you have public comment. This is actually public sessions where they have open houses to invite people in the community, make it more available rather than it just being like, oh, you have to show up at a city council meeting to essentially learn what's going on with your city. So that's part of the process. So as we dive into Public Works, the library's living roof, which essentially means to plan to change our patio on the fourth floor and open up the patio on the third floor and just essentially plant more plants and trees and stuff like that, looking to have some more green space to naturally cool the building and create different space inspired by mini urban plans to bring some green into urban centers of Missoula. Tracy Campbell with the city talks more about this program and what they're doing.
So the redevelopment agency has provided $75,000. Missoula County, which is what this agreement is for, Missoula County is providing $75,000. The Library Foundation, $70,000, sorry. And then DNRC, which is a planning grant that we received a couple years ago, that is also being used towards the match, and that's $30,000. So this agreement is just so that when I'm submitting a reimbursement request to the county, that they have a record of the agreement and can then reimburse us that money that we're spending for the project.
And, part of this also has to do with the fact that, it's the Missoula County Public Library. It's within the city limits, so within the city's best interests, they want to make sure that there's opportunity. And, the library has been pushing for this to expand it, try to raise some money for this thing. It's going to be $1 million project, but it's looking to get funding through Library Foundation, MRA, county, and DNRC, just to be able to put down the 25% down matching grants, because you got to put your money where your mouth is if you're going to utilize and leverage grants from the government. Budget and Finance are back for their second quarter of the fiscal year 2026. They looked at how much money the city currently has and what its balancing needs to do for the next 3 months. The next one will probably be the quarter 3 update. There wasn't anything special. This was about a 5-minute meeting, and they just moved it on to the consent agenda. So we're going to jump into land use and planning, which is also talking about the north side. So, oh, excuse me, I'm just coughing like a storm, but okay. So there's a couple things happening for sure. I'm just definitely trying to double check some things. Hold on one second. All right, so there's a lot of things I'm going to be mentioning in this land use and planning, but the first one has to do with Mountain Line. They're looking to make a major dispatch center where they originally had their buses at a certain residential neighborhood underneath the Scott Street overpass, mind you. And Tracy Porcari, Permits and Land, she talks about the Mountain Line's intentions with their movement. So here's a map. They're going to be essentially moving close to the Missoula International Airport, just off of West Broadway.
The site is intended for the development of Mountain Line's new Moab facility, which, if you don't know what that stands for, it's the Maintenance Operations and Administration Base. It will include some space for freight operations, vehicle storage, motor vehicle repair, an EV charging hub, and some administrative office space, as well as the supporting infrastructure for that facility. All that said, annexation decisions, just as a reminder, aren't based on the development proposal. As that, of course, is never guaranteed, but of course, it's always helpful for some context. So our annexation policy, when determining if we want to annex land into city limits, we have to rely on the city's annexation policy to see if it meets the applicable criteria. Big one is always if the proposed annexation is located within annexation area A. That generally includes areas that meet the guidelines of the annexation policy and contribute to the logical growth pattern of the city.
And, nothing's more logical than the fact that they're expanding the Mullen neighborhood to be able to add all these amenities. And so having this additional kind of like buffer between the airport and all those residentials to have essentially have this kind of larger growing mountain lion company that the city has this public-private partnership with that allows for fare-free transportation on the mountain lion bus. So your free buses here in Missoula, definitely expansion and a lot of things growing with that one. There's a lot of investment in public transit to help bolster tourism, and also the multimodal approach that the city likes to say. Multimodal. You're going to hear that quite a bit from all these transportation goons. But yeah, it's good. Some things happening for sure. So Tara also talks about some of the recommendations for this as well.
7 recommended conditions from staff, mostly from Public Works. That's pretty normal. First one is just ensuring they petition to be in the transportation district, which of course in this case shouldn't be a problem because it's mountain line, but just in case something were to happen to the project and the land were to be transferred for some reason, this is just standard. Then we've got 2 conditions on road improvements. One, to have them dedicate a minimum 68-foot right-of-way along Whippoorwill Drive from the western edge of parcel 1A or tract 1A1 going east and then ending all the way at Broadway. And then the other is to install street improvements all along that portion of Whippoorwill.
All right, and this is undeveloped farmland, so they're looking to develop it, get everything all squared away, make things like most projects in the parts of Missoula, they require infrastructure plan to be put into place along with the amenities. They reflect the city's standards of zoning and planning. Mountain Lion is just one of those string of private-public partnerships, like I mentioned earlier, that the city is invested in improving the bus system in Missoula to expand further into reserve and Mullen areas, which is sorely lacking since Route 10 was discontinued more than 10 years ago. So as we move on, we're going to go talk about a little bit more about Scott Street's development in their newest neighborhood on the north side. So Michael Hicks with MRA talks a little bit more about this, about their renewal district plan.
Calling Phase 1 property, which is the roughly 93 acres that was recently annexed into the city on the former Roseburg manufacturing site. This property currently contains parcels owned by both Roseburg and Story House, and both have submitted letters in support of this process. In December, the MRA board kind of gave approval to move forth with this, but ultimately the City Council here has the authority to kind of approve this process. So what we'll plan to do is come before you again on Monday. We'll set a public hearing and go from there. I'll show you the schedule in a few slides.
All right. So without too much fanfare, MCAT got a chance to get a tour of Story House and their old facilities on Roseburg. A big part of this is, for those of you who don't know, Story House is essentially a real estate group that's launching their own movie studios. So if you know Nick Chakota here in town, he bought the Top Hat, bought the Wilma, invested in the Kettle House Amphitheater. He comes from a real estate development background, and he came to Missoula with some of his plans to build out the entertainment, which became Logjam Presents. This is kind of what Story House is kind of doing. They're trying to leverage their real estate background to help build this infrastructure out. Not necessarily just doing a movie business, but also acquiring roughly the 23 acres for like workforce housing. This included with the transfer of some of the county land into the city and proposed urban renewal district, which is going to expand the already existing urban renewal district, which helped already fund the Rivara project and utilize a lot of that commercial space on the north side, which, there's definitely some lacking when it comes to a lot of commercial businesses on that side, but it didn't lack in industrial parts of it. So a couple of these industrial plants, a lot of things, and not to mention the north side rezoning. Even before the Unified Development Code, they were transferring a lot of this industrial into more mixed-use zoning to allow for more residential, which is where you see the Bellagio, which is a major affordable housing, which utilizes the Missoula Housing Authority and HUD, along with the Trinity Navigation Center just off of Broadway, and not to mention the Rivara project, which is currently ongoing. So Michael also talks about the needs for this industrial site to move forward.
And I just wanted to point out a few land use plan and urban renewal plan kind of alignments here. In particular, the improved infrastructure components of both. And to illustrate the need, I just wanted to pull this up. On the left, you'll see city utilities as they are today, and on the right, and the kind of open space, that is the area that we are looking at bringing into the urban renewal district. So there's a great need for infrastructure improvements moving forward. And, as this redevelops, it's going to require investments outside of what MRA alone can fund. But we expect that TIF will nonetheless be a critical tool in that process.
All right, so MRA is looking to utilize the urban renewal district in that area, expand it, have more tax revenue built upon the urban renewal district for TIF funding. So a lot of time TIF funding is generated through commercial businesses that have agreed to have their own kind of special improvement district in the form of urban renewal district. So essentially that means that the business is going to looking to reinvest in it. Part of this would also allow for them to be able to utilize TIF funding at the same time dealing with the fact that they're being annexed within the city, so they'll be paying higher taxes in that particular area to be able to get that pot that is TIF funding overall. So there's a lot of potential for this site. Northside has a lot of work done over the pandemic, like I said, with Velagio and Rivara. And of course, many of the ideas, and despite the dreams and goals, the bottom line is the city will annex this for purpose of generating additional TIF revenue for the existing urban renewal district, which will improve this area, which includes major infrastructure, so very much like the Mountain Line transit system, utilizing that land. But the potential for housing only is growing on the north side, and you're going to really see the difference because Scott Street is really going to separate the north side into two major halves, with the new housing and development on the former industrial sites, which from what the city was upon discovery when they were able to acquire the land trust for the Rivara project, was that there wasn't much cleanup to do on the former industrial site as they would have feared. In a lot of ways, they're getting more money for cleanups for the post office downtown than they ever needed to get cleaned up for these industrial sites in the north side. So there's a lot to say about that for sure, and it just be able to have this kind of real estate to be able to expand residential in an area that was pretty much just a lot of industrial businesses kind of going out of businesses, and it is sad in and of itself. But a lot of that area was not really used for the purpose of expanding residential, because that was supposed to be considered like more of the outskirts of town. But now, because Missoula's grown out, we've never really grown up. Missoula's always kind of grown out, and Ward 2 is a prime example of one of the fastest growing parts of Missoula. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it over and over again. It's just one of those things that the north side is definitely becoming the major hub and maybe major gold mine for a lot of new housing projects for the city of Missoula, especially when it comes to affordability. And frontstepclt.org is such a good resource for a lot of people looking into get in on this while they still can, because just a lot of potential in that particular housing. And it's one of the few places that is growing without really just messing with the fringe communities like East Missoula, Bonner, Lolo, a lot of those towns that are out of the city and the city's hustle and bustle for good reason, because people like the rural, kind of like getting out of the headspace of the busyness of the city of Missoula. And as more and more we're spreading further and further out, it's really kind of encompassing. And so there's definitely, like, instead of like, because I'm talking about the urban, the UDC, the Unified Development Code, which is looking to really just expand and grow the city of Missoula. It's definitely adding more density, but not as quite as much as needed to keep up with the kind of demand that the county and city can agree on with the amount of housing supply needed to bring the kind of like the market price housing down. But it's still kind of an awkward kind of situation, since developers are spending X amount of money just to build these places, and if housing prices go down, they end up losing more money as a result, which kind of goes against this kind of like, oh, you got to buy and sell kind of stuff. But regardless, I don't want to get too much into that, as we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the new programs airing on MCAT. And so we got quite a bit of new programs airing this week on MCAT. We have dance programs, political programs as well, especially the program that we did last week when it came to the Q&A. So last Friday, Bonner hosted a Q&A with a AI data farm, AI data center that's being proposed and run in the former Bonner Milltown industrial site, the log mill, the mill site, sorry. And so here's a little taste of all those programs and more.
For why, so what is this? What is the story? Why is it called the Lolo Trail? Why is it called Lolo Creek? And we have these ancient names. We just heard from Molly talking about Tumtumkli, the Salish name, no salmon, right? And right over the other side at Colt Killed Creek, for all you Clarkies out there, is Epsumkli, has salmon, right? So there's this Salish language. And so here's the sort of language map of all the Salishan languages, and then we've got over to our east the Blackfeet speak an Algonquian language, and we have the Kootenai doing their own little weird thing kind of in the middle of it all. So that's sort of one set of language groups. And
they're all going to be eventually migrating the same way, especially on the hydro-cooled Bitcoin miners. They're going to be they're trying to capture all the heat in the liquid and make them more quiet. If you look at historical air-cooled types of Bitcoin miners, those data centers, they're massive data centers, and they had racks stacked everywhere, and they're all air-cooled. Now the migration is to liquid cooled. The difference right now today in today's technology on the GPU side, the intensity and the energy consumption of the machines. You don't take as much square footage of an AI machine with a newer technology than you with like a Bitcoin machine. They take up a lot more space. So I guess the square footage, because 1 megawatt of a Bitcoin mining cluster with the new technology is less than 100 square feet. Yeah, and so you can put them in smaller spaces, not these giant behemoths, especially if you go with the direct liquid cooled side.
The legitimating language that the United States used was codified first in the Monroe Doctrine and then expanded in the Roosevelt Corollary. In the official language of the 1823 Monroe Doctrine, it aimed to prevent any further European meddling in Latin America, most importantly, drawing a red line against any European military adventures in the region. Violation of the Monroe Doctrine would be viewed by the U.S. as a hostile act, requiring a military response on the part of the United States.
They were the petals of those flowers, beautiful with life, giving thanks for so much rain, fateful nourishment.
Eram já as rosas, eram já as flores, negras de toda a noite.
They were once the roses, they were once the dark flowers of the entire night.
E longe, muito longe do seu lar.
And far, so far from their home.
E eu olhei quando pensando me detive. Eu estava com as flores torcidas e amassadas.
And I looked, and whilst thinking, I stopped. I was with the flowers, twisted.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about movies that are coming out this weekend. It's time for Pre-Critic, where I judge movies based on the fact that they're coming out and the fact that they're movies, and most movies kind of just feel all samey. This movie that's coming out right now is They Will Kill You. Ooh, it's a horror thriller that, in the likes of Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs, comes a young lady looking to get some cash while working as a housekeeper. But she's working in an apartment complex, and the people are crazy, and she has to fight against an eccentric group of people trying to kill her. Makes sense, right? I really don't have much to say rather than the fact that these kind of movies tend to be hallways, apartments, and various other rooms that shouldn't be permitted in basic building codes, but perhaps there's something more to this place than the meat grinder for the help. People so desperate for jobs, they're going to murder house just so they can get paid. All right, Forbidden Fruits. So you have like an 80s movie about a group of popular girls with a dark secret. Probably killed one of their friends over the summer, but Brad was having the best party ever and they ditched the body. Watch as these fruit-based ladies work together and against the new girl who just got the job at the mall. You thought working in retail was a nightmare? This one is more or less about the dark union looking to force women to getting along or moving along, but moving along into the next life because no one escapes the sisterhood of the traveling perishables. All right, then we got Alpha, coming of age thriller about a 13-year-old girl who gets a tattoo against her will, and other things happen as her life is in shambles because she's coming of age when women do it in movies. It's usually a metaphor for dark things associated with womanhood. Life is terrible for her and her single mom as the 13-year-old descends into madness and excess. And I'm sure you'll love this one because it's one of those kind of like weird, kind of like super windy South by Southwest kind of movies that are just like, yeah, no, thank you. And, it's kind of like, you get those kind of thriller movies where everything's like shaky cam and it's like, this is raw, this is real cinematography. That's kind of what you get from this movie. All right, up next, we have a new dub and stuff for you guys. We're a redub a movie, and this is from the 1940 movie Chasing Trouble.
So I told him. You know what I told him? I told him not to tell me. But man, he ended up telling me.
Ain't that just the way?
Well, luckily for me, I forgot what he told me.
Well, let me tell you there. Thanks for the lighter. In this day and age, it's nice to know that everyone's killing their lungs.
It's too much information. I was just hoping for a tip. So what brings you by to the hotel?
I'm an investigator.
So like a cop that reads books and stuff? Are you investigating my cousin's murder?
Excuse me?
He was shot out near the precinct by 93. Do you know anything about that?
Let me think about that for a second.
I see it on your badge number.
It's, we're doing it best.
I mean, it's not that hard to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you a cop? Because I'm a cop. I investigate things.
It's not everything.
See? On this newspaper, there's a high-profile case I'm investigating. Do you know anything about this?
Oh, whoa, crazy.
I know.
That's insane. No way.
So, do you know anything about it?
Marmaduke said what?
What? What are you talking about?
Oh, you know Marmaduke, the Sunday Funnies.
Wait, Marmaduke's new? I gotta check this out. Oh, you do new wrong. Wait a minute, this isn't normal Marmaduke. When did they introduce a cat? This doesn't make any sense. This is outrageous. How could... It's Marmaduke. It's a dog. It's a talking dog.
I know, it's kind of weird.
I've never seen a cat eat lasagna in my life.
Well, maybe it's another artist trying to launch another comic on the Sunday.
Oh, hey, what's going on, dude? I was just showing this gentleman Marmaduke, and then it showed a cat eating lasagna. Oh, yeah, that's Garfield. We have to get to the bottom of this. Why are they showing a cat eating lasagna? It doesn't make any sense. Tom, is this guy bothering you? We're just bellhops. We just work here. Well, I'm actually investigating an ongoing series of murders that are happening in this town. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Okay. You really kind of buried the lead on that one. Take a look. What? Oh, you can't be serious. Introducing a new character on the Funnies? No, I mean the murder? Yeah, I'll talk about the murder. Well, I'm just hearing this now. I'll be sure to get you access to that room. Oh, so you weren't even on shift. You don't know anything about what's happening in this case, do you? Well, no. Well, you can't feign ignorance. Well, I'm not really feigning ignorance. I'm just standing here doing my job. If you need a room, I can help you put your stuff in. I've heard enough. All right, see you later. Oh, jeez, that was weird.
I'm starting to like that cat.
No, that's not about the cat. Let's not talk about the cat. There's somebody who was murdered in our hotel, and I'm pretty sure this incompetent detective is trying to finger us on this case, and he's trying to put the finger on us.
I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like this guy could just take us and put us in jail forever if he wanted to.
Well, I, for one, think that the cops have our best interests at heart. Don't you?
Of course I do. I think the cops would never do anything wrong to either of us.
Yeah, he seemed like a nice guy. He likes Marmaduke just like me, and the whole Garfield thing is kind of...
Can we please just stop talking about cats? This is a very serious matter. Leave the cats for the internet.
You don't like cat videos?
Of course I like cat videos. I have 2 eyes and a pulse.
What's next?
Well, they'll determine if they even like the cat in the comics on the Sundays anyways.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the murders.
No, we're... oh, yeah, of course we're talking about the murders. We're not talking about Garfield. We're talking about the murders. Let's focus.
We should have a staff meeting.
Okay, we're going to have to write a letter to the Chicago Times, and then we're going to tell them how much we like Garfield.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some news that are happening in and around the world and Missoula and beyond. There's definitely quite a bit of interesting things happening, but Midtown is getting quite the facelift with the affordable housing facelift, with $67 million going into the affordable housing project for the former Johnson Street shelter, phase 2 of the railroad site moving forward. The 200 unit will be placed at the former site of emergency winter shelter that turned into an extension of the Palvarella Center with more than 100 people staying there at any given time. As funding for homelessness dried up in 2025, the city looked towards transforming the site as part of the Great Midtown Master Plan. The city will donate land to the portion of the project, which will provide $9.3 million match to help bolster the tax credit application, on top of the 9% low-income housing tax credit for the state, thus bolstering affordable housing component altogether. Out of the 17 sources invested in this project, 193 units will be made deed-restricted housing, so more of that conception of the quote-unquote Rivar project where people are looking for more affordable housing, so it's happening. But there will be market rate townhouses as part of the development. So with the 33 market rate townhouses, they're kind of like the buffer between the Bitterroot Trail and the difference between the north and the south side of the railroad park, separating the railroad park, kind of like a buffer to the parks and trails. But of course, there's always going to be access for people to go there because that's a big part of Missoula's plan. And Urban Renewal District 3 has been a capacity to cover $9.3 million funding reserve without issuing debt. If the project receives the state tax credit, it will likely break ground in 2028. So we've been following the closure of the Johnson Street shelter. This is one of the reasons behind the closure, so the city can activate the site for the plans of Midtown. They're hoping that this would also help roll over and start the snowballing effect when it comes to the greater Midtown area, where they're looking to raise up the height requirements for the Midtown area, just to have a little bit higher levels. Because if you've ever driven through Midtown, there ain't many places that have 2 stories besides some homes. It's kind of crazy if you really look around. As the weather is warming up, Montana is gearing up for summer tourism season, which also includes mussels. Not just these mussels, mind you. Zebra mussels have been a major invasive species that Montana has been fighting against with boat inspections and more. Zebra, quagga mussels are considered a major catastrophic threat to Montana's aquatic ecosystem and economy, capable of clogging water infrastructure and disrupting food chains. I'm only mentioning this because NBC Montana confirmed some of these invasive species were apprehended this week. The boat has been purchased over Lake Oulagan in Oklahoma. It's essentially one of those kind of you buy online purchases and you have it delivered. And the vessel was removed from the water roughly 24 hours before the transportation began. When the watercraft arrived in the aquatic invasive species check in Wyoming, inspectors discovered viable mussels still attached to the hull. The vessel was immediately flagged for quarantine due to risk of spreading invasive species. And usually when that happens, you do have to take it through a chemical bath that costs quite a bit of money. And so Game and Fish officials worked with the boat owner to coordinate safe transit to its final destination, Montana, to prevent the craft from being launched before being proper treatment. The vessel was documented, physically sealed, and fitted with a notification tag requiring professional decontamination before it can legally enter any water body in the state of Montana. So buyer beware, make sure you get the boats checked beforehand, or you may be pulled over and get fined even further for not complying with state and federal laws. Story House, like I mentioned before, and they also talked a little bit about it in my city council report. The startup movie studio that is being built on their side, Roseburg Industrial Site, is looking to expand housing in the area. Portions of the initial plan will have come to fruition with the new wave of residential development unfolding along Scott Street. With Roseburg plant now closed, portions of the property could be reimagined for partnerships in the property owners. So according to Missoula Current, the area known as the North Reserve Scott Street Urban Renewal District spans only 900 acres between Interstate 90 and West Broadway. The area was initially planned more than a decade ago, but a number of conditions have changed, including the closure of former Roseburg plant. The site had 235 acres to work with, and when they began the process, they'd be able to create accommodations for workforce housing for folks to stay and be a part of their production studio, which plans to activate the space fully within the next couple of years. So you're going to see some real things happening with the next 18 months from what I heard, just because MCAT also had a tour of Story House, just kind of ask them questions and just kind of see what they're going on there. They're looking to build a train station set in one of their buildings. They have essentially 3 major buildings that they're going to be working with to have more of a rotating and semi-permanent movie studio setup for folks to use when they want to fly in, stay at the Story House workforce housing, and then film their movie. So Northside is one of those places that have always been a hard time for developers, and industrial sites tend to have long turnarounds for development based on environmental concerns. But with the city's involvement with the Verrar and Villaggio in the area, they have basically noticed that a lot of the land in the area hasn't had to deal with a lot of those chemical or any issues from most industrial sites. So yeah, just a lot of things happening in Missoula, and Helena has been at odds for the state over ICE and immigration. So they just had a vote, and And the whole idea is that Helena Mayor Emily Dean from the Montana Free Press basically said that they are being baited into a fight that is rigged against them because all they wanted to do is make sure the law enforcement were not wearing masks, especially the ICE agents that are coming into many communities, especially came about the whole Minnesota shootings with Renee Good and Alex Peretti. A big part of that had to do with that, a lot of those scares and fears that ICE agents would essentially come to Helena and just kind of swing their power around. And so after more than 5 hours of public comment and deliberation on Thursday, during which nearly 100 people testified fiercely and emotionally about local government control, budget risk, authoritarianism, and democracy, Helena's commission scrapped the January resolution with a 4-1 vote. They kind of caved, and Mayor Emily called for recess members of the public yelled shame and shouted profanities at the city officials. When they returned, commission members directed city attorneys to begin redrafting the resolution and invited the Attorney General's office to discuss the revised language. The motion passed on a 4-1 vote with Commissioner Melinda Reed dissenting. So, the tensions during the special meeting held in the Helena Civic Center auditorium to accommodate the larger crowds, it was quite the feat. Like, I saw some of the images online too, and just the amount of people a part of this as well. And the majority of the public commenters on Thursday rejected the idea that the resolution made Helena's a sanctuary city and urged the city officials to keep the resolution in place. So this is an article that they put on the Missoula Free Press, and you can follow them further as well. And and part of this also has to do with the fact that even Minnesota is suing the U.S. for not properly investigating the Renee Good and Alex Peretti case, which involved ICE agents using deadly force. If you even pull a gun in the local law enforcement, you have to fill out a lot of paperwork for why you pulled out your gun, even if you don't discharge it. In a lawsuit filed at the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, Minnesota Attorney Keith Ellenson from County Attorney Mary Moriarty and Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans alleged that the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security have blocked state investigation from accessing evidence they need in order to investigate those 3 shootings. They have been kicked the can the road for some time now, with cases being treated like a news cycle, hoping that it would just go away. The lawsuit names the Justice Department, the Department of Homeland Security Attorney General Pam Bondi, and former Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who presided over the immigration crackdown in Minnesota earlier this year. The department said the FBI is leading the Peretti investigation with support of Homeland Security investigation, and Customs and Border Protection is also investigating separately. And to be honest, ICE is a little busy with airport security, and just as time for the TSA to get funded, essentially just as of last night, early morning today, because they finally got that package done. I think here's the, let's see. And the overall use of ICE in airports was a result of Democrats not supporting these attempts to overhaul election from leader who knows that a blue wave is possibly becoming a monsoon. This has to do with the Save America Act, which is supposed to make it harder for people to vote. And Democrat Emily Gregory, essentially somebody that nobody really knew, defeated Republican John Maples, essentially flipping Trump's own Mar-a-Lago district in deep red state parts of the state to Democrat. So with fewer than 800 more votes out of the 33,000 ballots cast in the Palm Beach anchored district, the seat became vacant this past August when GOP Mike Caruso resigned to become Palm Beach County Clerk and Comptroller. So Gregory, just a 40-year-old Army wife, owns and runs a Jupiter-based fitness center for pregnant and postpartum women. The first-time candidate made affordability, public education, tackling rising property insurance and housing costs, and access to health care parts of her campaign. While that's happening in Florida, many GOP folks in Montana are turning towards libertarians. Not necessarily sure, but that's just part of the story from what they're saying on Montana Free Press. In many ways, the GOP has always been, the buck stops here, and libertarians are a little bit more like, don't tread on me, and I will have my taxes fund anything, especially, and I will not have my taxes fund anything, especially welfare and social security nets. The joke is, if you want a disagreement, talk to another libertarian. For the first time in recent memory, Montana libertarians have in 2026 fielded candidates in every race from federal office, plus several down ballot contests. The Libertarian ballot is full of candidates all younger than 50 and have not previously run for office in Montana under the Libertarian banner. And part of this has to do with, for folks who follow like online cultures and all that kind of stuff, Dave Smith is a prime example of kind of like when people think of libertarians, he's kind of like the go-to comedian guy who does this kind of stuff. But, their support for Donald Trump had been a major turning point for coalitions to try not to get activated, but come together to support their own goals. But the libertarians felt betrayed because a part of this had to do with the fact that Montana Libertarian Party Vice Chair Liam McCullen told Montana Free Press, quote, "Americans are worried about the cost of living, and Republicans and Democrats have not adequately addressed the issue, partly because they haven't identified the real cause, which is the printing press or the amount of spending. And part of this is due to the war machine. Since 2001, our country has been in 7 wars," end quote. Supporters of DOGE and their cutting of many federal programs, libertarians have see the cracks in the Trump agenda as their goals to prevent America from investing in wars and not in the homeland has been a lightning rod for many parties looking to flip seats, not in the direction you'd expect. It also harkens back to independent candidate Seth Bodnar, who was just recently left his job as University of Montana's president, even getting support from John Tester, who also believe that state Democrats have lost their ways. Montana state libertarians also stated that they oppose military action for reasons other than self-defense, position reflected in the porcupine logo adopted by the National Party in 2020. They haven't forgotten President Trump's campaign promises of no new wars. They have argued for decades the U.S. military and economic aid to Israel makes America complicit in Israel's actions in Gaza, violating libertarians' non-aggressive agenda. Republicans tend to leave the party for libertarianism, as a lot of times people who leave the Democratic Party tend to go more liberal, left, into the Green Party. Sometimes they go into the middle. There's this whole middle ground stuff that people are starting to realizing that maybe we shouldn't be just in the middle because now we're just going slowly into this good night, essentially. But regardless, there's a lot of trends going on here, and a lot of these secondary and third, fourth parties are coming out of the woodworks as viable options for a lot of people who are just kind of sick and tired of the whole system as a whole. But that being said, the United States is heavily beneficial on the two-party system just by the overwhelming amount of votes that goes towards one or the other. And at this point, it really feels like the people who are not going to be voting GOP most likely won't be voting Democrat, might be going to these more third and other parties that are definitely connecting more with their audiences in a way. I hated it. I probably shouldn't have said audiences, but regardless, that's just kind of how it is. But let's talk about things that are happening here in the city of Missoula. Here's some of the events, so you can look up these events at missoulaevents.net. But here's a kind of an overview of what's happening this weekend. Conquering the Transition Zone. Lifelong Learning Center is doing some more pickleball while moving through a transition zone in pickleball. The 2-hour workshop focused on strategic decision-making and advanced ball placement skills. Through drills and game-like scenarios, you'll develop abilities to play offensively rather than defensively while approaching the net. Stroller Strides, Mommy and Me workout class. This is an ongoing thing daily in the Bonner Park starting at 9:30. Little Clubs Playgroup is indoor fun for kids at the Sports Barn at 10 a.m. The Missoula Food Bank meal distribution is open at 10 a.m. This morning for people who have insecurities about food. Family fun time at Mismo Gymnastics at 10 a.m. Indoor fun at an indoor play arena. Project Community Connect, like I said, is happening from 10 to 3 p.m. All local programs working to reduce homelessness in Missoula will be all located at Missoula Public Library, offering haircuts and dental work as they open the library to get people connected to resources. This is from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Preschool playgroup at Roots Ecker Sports Center at 10:45. Lunch at Missoula Senior Center at the Poverello Center at 11:30 a.m. This is a daily occurrence. Missoula Senior Center does theirs Monday through Friday. Poverello Center does theirs every single day, morning, noon, and night for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Watercolor and Yarns is canceled, so they usually have it on the 4th floor at noon, but there's the Project Community Connect, so there's going to be happening instead. Open workshop at Home Resource started at 12 noon. This is an ongoing thing at the Home Resources. All Abilities Art Club at Base. This is for people living with disabilities looking to get connected through art and also see if there's additional resources to help them live independently. Young Adults Writers Group at Missoula Public Library at 3:30 in the afternoon. Predator Feeding at the Missoula Butterfly House at 3:30 p.m. Learn Computer Animation with Blender at MCAT starting at 4 p.m. here in our studio. Jeanette Rankin Peace Center is hosting a poster making sign for the No Kings rally tomorrow at 1 p.m. So if you're interested, it starts at 4 p.m. tonight. If you want to make your own poster for the the protest that's going to be happening at the Red X's. Friday night dinner and game night at Rooster Cafe at 6 p.m. Coached Open Pickleball is helping at Lifelong Learning Center at 6 p.m. Clay Studio is doing a pottery date night at 6 p.m. Dungeons and Dragons Guild for Adults at Missoula Public Library online at 6 p.m. You can look it up on missoulapubliclibrary.org, or you can find it at missoulaevents.net. The Cosmos, from the Big Bang to the End of Time. Planetarium at the Payne Family Native American Center starting at 6 p.m. They also have a 7 p.m. show. MCT Youth Series is doing Seussical Kids, so if you like Dr. Seuss, they made a play called Seussical, but they're doing a MCT Kids version called Seussical Kids. Humphrey McGee is going to be playing some rock music at the Wilma. It's starting at 7 p.m. If you like folk dancing, they have the Folklore Society at the Missoula Elks Lodge at 7 p.m. tonight. Karaoke at the Jack Saloon at 7 p.m. Jazz Off the Rail at Leaf and Quiet. Zach is doing a Zest Fest and mini show at 2006. And so on Friday, they're come alive with second annual Zest Fest with a 14th annual mini show fundraising featuring performances of musicians, artists, and unique experiences designed to unite, inspire, and fuel creativity. So it's a big event happening at 7 p.m. tonight at the ZAC. Cacao ceremony at Sacred Alley at 7 p.m. World Rhythms percussion concert at 7:30 p.m. at the Denison Theater. This is where they put all the drummers and all the people in the drum lines together at the Denison Theater. It is quite the feat. It's really good. I highly recommend it. Every time I've gone, it's been a wonderful experience. It's happening tonight at 7:30 p.m. at the Denison Theater. Benevolence at the Old Post is playing their music at 8 p.m. The Spook Lights at Monks is playing some DJ electronic music at 8 p.m. Josh Farmer is going to be at the Union Club tonight at 9 p.m. And then wrapping up is Greaves playing some hip-hop music at the Top Hat at 10 p.m. And then, as always, your Saturday markets and such. May is when they start outside, but they're going to be in Locals Only / the Badlander, and also next to Shields inside the Missoula Southgate Mall. Naturalist Field Day, Snow Geese Migration at Freeze Out Lake. This is through the Montana Natural History Center this weekend. This is part of the over 300,000 birds that are migrating north through Freeze Out Lake. This isn't here in Missoula, but this is a big part of it as well, as this is a big deal with many different kinds of bird species migrating north for the spring and summer seasons. Heart Saver Pediatric First Aid Care. So if you're looking to get certified in CPR, AED, and first aid care, Lifelong Learning Center does theirs on Saturday at 8:30 a.m. Missoula Villages. So through the Missoula Aging Services, Missoula Villages is hosting kind of like their own community gathering event. So they're going to be doing muffins and moths at Butterfly House and the Insectarium. This is free. Join the breakfast at the Missoula Butterfly House and the Insectarium. Missoula Villages founders will be on hand to chat about Villages benefits and how membership works. They love to brainstorm and ideas how the village can grow and evolve to help. They did a yoga thing last month, and now they're doing a bug thing at the Missoula Butterfly House through Missoula Villages. So it's a great opportunity for people who are 55 and older, looking to live independently and get connected to resources, but also they're trying to build Missoula Villages because it takes a village to take care of each other. So that's a big part of the Missoula Aging Services, trying to break out and try to be a little bit more available in the community by hosting these kind of events. Missoula County Fairgrounds, they're doing a breakfast with the bunny, so start your Easter off a little bit earlier. They're doing an Easter egg hunt morning with a little extra magic. Breakfast with the bunny at March 28th in the Home Arts Building at the Missoula County Fairgrounds. You can check it out. This special event also helps kids support the Impact Kids Foundation, which provides scholarships so local kids can participate in camp, sports, and enrichment programs. Makerspace walk-in hours at 10 a.m. is Missoula Public Library. Line dancing Missoula Senior Center at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Saturday kids activities at the Natural History Center is learning about beavers, starting at 11. Hootin' and Hollering, Traveling to Restorate Park is all about the birds and the owls, and you get to look through some owl palettes. Ugh. Anyway, story time at Missoula Public Library every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Lawn and Lawn Alternatives at Karis Nursery. They're doing education classes just in time for the spring season. Baking with Sourdough, Honeyberry Culinary Classroom. This is a new organization. They're looking to allow for anybody with all experiences levels to learn about sourdough, and they're inviting special guest chef Andy Brown as he's baking with sourdough both professionally and at home for decades. Raised in the mountains of Livingston, Andy moved to Missoula to attend the university and study art, graduating with a BFA that left him qualified for food service industry. Fortunately, he chose the path of a baker. Saturday drop-ins every Saturday here at MCAT from 1 to 3 p.m. Kids get to do some stop animation, get a little taste of what our summer camps and spring camp, which is coming up in April. No Kings is happening in Missoula starting at 1 p.m. at the Red X's in downtown Missoula. You can't miss it. You'll be seeing a whole bunch of people out and about. Missoula definitely gets pretty well attended, and especially at this time of the year after the whole Iran thing, we're going to definitely get some people rallying. Chess tournament is happening at the UC room 170. So there's going to be a chess tournament at the University Center at the University of Montana campus at 1:30 afternoon on Saturday. Montana Repertory Theater, they're doing first reads at Missoula Public Library. It's about that time for them to go on tour through the Montana Repertory Theater. This is one of the things that a lot of actors of the Theater and Dance strive to be a paid actor and be able to tour and act. And so they're looking through the first reads and trying to get your feedback on what kind of play that that you guys respond to the best. Mahjong 102, which is another class that they're going to be doing at the AR workshop here in Missoula. It's starting at 2 in the afternoon on Saturday. Saturday Tiny Tales at Missoula Public Library at 3 p.m. New Works, Reworks, and Reimagining at Free Cycles at 3 p.m. Wild Night for Wildlife at 2016. This is the Trailhead River Sports. It's a chance to gather with fellow hunters, anglers, and conservationists to celebrate work we do in protecting wildlife, wild places, and fair chase traditions, all at the Trailhead River Sports at 6 p.m. on Saturday. A collaborative fashion show, Hide and Seek at Confluence Center at 6. They got Steve's one-man band at Free Cycles doing Street Side at Free Cycles. Dance Till Dusk, Badlander for Millennials who need to be in bed by 11, starting at 6:30 p.m. LSD and the Search for God, Zach Does Electronic Music, starting at 7 p.m. Live music by the Cahoots and the Jack Saloon, playing some country at 7 p.m. We got Latin Night at Lodge Ballroom Salsa, so doing some salsa Viva Montana at 7 p.m. at Elks Lodge on Saturday. Blue Point at the River Ramblers at Free Cycles here Saturday at 7 p.m. Wilma Theater is playing some jazz with Jovino Santos Neto and the Missoula Symphony at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. Jaden Decker at Sunrise Saloon at 9 p.m. Karaoke at West Side Lanes at 9 p.m. Bad Bunny Latin Nights with salsa classes. Monk's Electronic Music at 9 p.m. Tom Castor Union Club. Chris Moon to wrap up your Saturday at the Badlander on 10 p.m. Then we got the KFGM record sale at the Missoula Senior Center. So they're trying to, they got a lot of donations and looking to do a record swap. They were accepting a lot of records here at the location here at the Missoula Public Library next to MCAT. Missoula Senior Center will be hosting the KFGM record sale to help bolster KFGM's Missoula Community Radio. Yoga at Western Cider at 11 a.m. Sunday Fun Day, Cranky Sam Public House at 12 noon. Stitch and Bitch at the space at DOI Studios. Always like saying that. Montgomery Motto Swap at 12 noon. Motto Gear Swap, they're teaming up with the Lattice Missoula. Will make sure you have all your spring and summer riding essentials. Come down to Saturday Bloody Mary cocktail at the Montgomery Distillery. They're doing a motto swap so you can swap gear and follow riding enthusiasts. So check all that out. Fiddle Fair at the Missoula Public Library. They're gonna, if you've ever been interested in trying violin, Missoula Public Library is starting at 12:45 on Sunday. And then we got outdoor Sacred Harp singing. Bonner Park is doing a folk singing. Sacred Harp is a participatory a cappella singing tradition. They're playing harp and they want you to sing a 4-part harmony with them, starting at 1 p.m. at Bonner Park. Puppet Show is at Free Cycles. They're doing The Perfect Pour. Wild Women Archetype, an experimental book club at Monroe Studios at 4:30 p.m. We also got Dram Tough Trivia at the Dram Shop Central at 6 p.m. on Sunday. And Compline is Holy Episcopal Church. They have a half-hour evening prayer on Palm Sunday at 8 p.m. Rocking Karaoke at the Sunrise Saloon to wrap up your Sunday. And that pretty much does it for me. I wanted to, there's not much more I want to say. Also, we have one more spot available for our spring break camp for kids age 8 to 14. We have a bunch of spots still available for our summer camps. You can sign up online at mcat.org. And for anything Wake Up Missoula, you can subscribe to me on my YouTube page. Wake Up Missoula, you can't miss it. All right, take care, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you later.